In a now famous early experiment, dogs given inescapable electric shocks eventually stopped trying to escape, even when escape later became entirely possible. They had learned that their actions made no difference. This discovery of learned helplessness, made almost by accident, launched one of psychology's most important research programs, eventually producing an evidence-based method for teaching people the opposite, learned optimism. Julian Rotter's concept of locus of control describes a stable personality dimension reflecting whether a person generally believes that life outcomes result primarily from their own actions, effort, and choices, an internal locus of control, or primarily from external forces including luck, chance, fate, or powerful others beyond their personal influence, an external locus of control. This dimension is measured along a continuum rather than as a strict either-or category, and predicts a wide range of important outcomes including academic achievement, health behavior, and psychological well-being. Research consistently associates internal locus of control with a range of generally positive outcomes, including higher academic achievement, since students who believe their effort matters are more likely to actually exert effort, better health protective behaviors, since believing one's actions affect health outcomes motivates preventive behavior, and more effective coping under stress, since internal locus individuals are more likely to engage in active, problem-focused coping rather than passive resignation. However, an extreme or rigid internal locus of control can also produce excessive self-blame when facing outcomes genuinely outside personal control. Martin Seligman and Stephen Meyer's foundational research found that animals exposed to uncontrollable, inescapable negative events, shocks that could not be avoided or escaped no matter what response was attempted, subsequently failed to attempt escape even when placed in a new situation where escape was easily possible, showing passive, helpless behavior that closely parallels symptoms of human depression. This learned helplessness was specifically produced by the perceived uncontrollability of the original negative experience, not merely by the negative experience itself. Animals exposed to escapable shocks of identical intensity did not develop this helpless pattern. Extending learned helplessness theory to humans, Seligman's later research identified explanatory style, the habitual pattern of explanations a person generates for negative events, as the key psychological mechanism translating uncontrollable experiences into depression like helplessness. A pessimistic explanatory style attributes negative events to internal, stable, and global causes. It's my fault. It will always be this way. It affects everything. While an optimistic explanatory style attributes negative events to external, unstable, and specific causes, substantially buffering against the development of learned helplessness and depression following genuinely difficult experiences. Seligman's learned optimism program, building directly on explanatory style research, teaches a structured cognitive technique for disputing habitual pessimistic explanations, closely related to cognitive restructuring techniques used in cognitive behavioral therapy, identifying the automatic pessimistic explanation generated for a negative event, examining the evidence for and against that explanation, and generating a more accurate, balanced, and typically less globally catastrophic alternative explanation. This is explicitly presented as a learnable skill requiring practice, not a fixed personality trait some people simply have and others lack. The Penn Resiliency Program, a school-based intervention directly applying learned optimism principles to children and adolescents, has been tested in multiple randomized controlled trials, generally showing modest but statistically significant reductions in depressive symptoms among participating students compared to control groups, with effects that in some studies persisted for 1 to 2 years following the intervention. While effect sizes vary across studies and populations, this represents one of the more rigorously tested applications of explanatory style theory to real-world preventive mental health intervention in schools. Locus of control and explanatory style together reveal that how we interpret the causes of events in our lives, not just what actually happens to us, powerfully shapes our resilience, motivation, and vulnerability to depression. Crucially, decades of research show these interpretive habits are not fixed traits, but skills that can be identified, examined, and deliberately retrained.